Hi, welcome to Reddit Audio Stories official channel. We hope you will have fun with us. I appreciate your visit to my channel dedicated to love stories. I encourage you to subscribe and give it a thumbs up as it serves as great motivation for me to create new content. Enjoy watching. The nurse was fired for theft and the hospital director asked him a question. His answer brought her to her knees. Arthur finally got a job as a nurse at a reputable hospital after years of toil and hardship to finish his nursing degree. He lived with his daughter Sophia in a small house on the outskirts of town. The owner, Mrs. Ivy, a kind lady, helped Arthur by taking care of Sophia while he worked. On the morning of this first day, Arthur proudly put on his new uniform, feeling nervous but hopeful. He knew that this job was the opportunity he so desperately needed to improve his and SAF life. When he arrived at the hospital, he was greeted by the head nurse, Harry, who looked him up and down with a disdainful expression. "So you're the new nurse," Harry said, crossing his arms. "I hope you know what you're doing." Arthur, with a shy smile, replied, "Yes, sir, I'm ready to work hard and learn." Harry just nodded his head and began to show Arthur his daily tasks. The supervisor seemed to have little patience and on several occasions made sarcastic comments about Arthur's inexperience. However, Arthur remained calm and determined. During the shift, Arthur met some coworkers who were more friendly. Ivy, a veteran nurse, offered him some advice. "Don't listen to Harry." She told him that she organized some medications. "It's like that with all new people. Just do your job, and eventually he'll leave you alone." Arthur obliged and continued with his duties, focusing on doing the best job he could. He knew he needed to prove himself not just to Harry, but to everyone in the hospital. At the end of the day, Arthur felt exhausted but satisfied. He was going home, thinking about Sophia and how this job could provide a better life for her. Mrs. Ivy, as always, was there to greet him. "How was the first day, Arthur?" she asked, smiling. "It was difficult, Donna Ivy, but I'll adjust. I just need a little time," he replied, taking Sophia in his arms and feeling grateful to have such a supportive friend as he put Sophia to bed. Arthur reflected on the challenges he had faced and those yet to come. Determined to succeed, he knew that this was only the beginning of his journey at the hospital, and so with renewed hope and unwavering determination, Arthur was ready to face whatever came his way, always with the goal of providing a better life for his daughter and excelling as an excellent nurse. Arthur woke up early, determined to do a good job on his second day at the hospital. Despite the scorn of Harry, the head nurse, he remained focused on his duties, always with a smile on his face and a willingness to help. Early in the morning, Arthur was assigned to care for Donna Isabella, an elderly patient who was recovering from surgery. With patience and affection, he helped Mrs. Isabella get up and walk down the hallway. The lady, grateful for the attention, commented with other nurses about the gentleness and competence of the new nurse. "She is an angel," said Mrs. Isabella, smiling at Arthur. "I'm sure I'll recover faster with his help." Arthur's dedication did not go unnoticed. Maya, the veteran nurse who gave him advice on the first day, began to notice the positive impact he was having on the patients. She commented with other colleagues and soon Arthur began to gain the trust and admiration of some team members. During a coffee break in the staff lounge, Arthur was approached by Hazel, the hospital director. She was an elegant and imposing woman, but with a welcoming look. "Hello, Arthur," said Hazel, smiling. "I have heard about the excellent work you're doing." "Keep it up, thank you, ma'am," replied Arthur, a little surprised by the director's attention. "I'm doing my best." Hazel watched Arthur for a moment, feeling a strange familiarity with him. There was something in his eyes and his manner that reminded her of someone, but she couldn't quite put her finger on who. Determined not to let the feeling disturb her, Hazel waved goodbye and returned to her office. Meanwhile, Arthur continued to perform his duties with dedication. With each passing day, he became more confident and secure in his work. Patients praised his care and attention, and some colleagues began to defend Arthur when Harry made sarcastic comments. "He's a great nurse," Harry said Ivy at a team meeting. "We should be supporting him, not criticizing him." Harry reluctantly shrugged his shoulders, but pressure from colleagues caused him to tone down his criticism. At the end of another day's work, Arthur felt tired but happy. He knew he was on the right track and that with perseverance, he could overcome any obstacle. When he arrived home, he was greeted by Mrs. Ivy and Sophia with smiles. "Was today a good day?" Dad asked Sophia cheerfully. "Yes, my dear," replied Arthur, hugging his daughter. "She's getting better every day." And so Arthur continued to dedicate himself to the job, gaining the trust and respect of those around him. He didn't know it yet, but his actions were beginning to change not only his life, but the lives of everyone around him. Hazel, the hospital director, kept praising Arthur at home. Her husband Charlie listened to that praise with growing discomfort that Arthur must really be an exemplary employee. Hazel commented over dinner, "The patients love him and even the team is more motivated." Charlie, an ambitious young man, felt a pang of jealousy. He wondered why Hazel was so impressed with a simple nurse. Such admiration seemed exaggerated and aroused in him a growing distrust. Determined to protect his position and status, Charlie began to watch Arthur closely, looking for any reason to harm him. At the hospital, Arthur remained oblivious to the intrigues. He was focused on performing his job with the same dedication as always. His routine consisted of caring for patients, assisting in surgeries, and ensuring that everyone received the best possible care. His empathy and professionalism were winning over more and more people. One day, while Arthur was helping Mrs. Isabella take her medications, Charlie appeared in the hallway and watched them from a distance. He saw how attentive and gentle Arthur was, which only increased his distrust. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Isabella," Arthur said with a smile. "How are you feeling today?" "Thanks to you, much better," Arthur replied. "Donna Isabella, you are an angel." Charlie didn't like what he heard. He decided to follow Arthur discreetly around the hospital, hoping to catch him making some mistake. Nevertheless, Arthur continued to perform his duties flawlessly. At home in the evening, Charlie mentioned his suspicions to Hazel. "You talk so much about this Arthur, but did you already think he might be hiding something? No one is that perfect." Hazel frowned. "Charlie, he's just a dedicated nurse. I see no reason to distrust him." "I'm just saying it's good to be vigilant," Charlie insisted. Days passed and Charlie did not give up his suspicions. He started asking Arthur's colleagues indirect questions, trying to discover something compromising. However, the answers were always positive. Everyone praised Arthur for his dedication and professionalism. Arthur, unaware of Charlie's intentions, continued to dedicate himself to the work and the patients'. He felt a sense of accomplishment in seeing the patients' recovery and the gratitude in their eyes. One day while Arthur was making his rounds, he encountered Hazel in the hallway. She stopped to chat with him. "Arthur, I have heard a lot of compliments about you," Hazel said. "I'm very pleased with your work. Keep it up." "Thank you, ma'am," Arthur replied, smiling. "I'm just doing my best." As Hazel walked away, Arthur felt a strange sensation that something was wrong, but he failed to identify what it was. He decided not to make a big deal of it and continued his work with the same dedication. Charlie, on the other hand, was determined to find something against Arthur. His distrust and jealousy blinded him, and he was willing to go to any lengths to protect his position, even if it meant harming someone innocent. The web of jealousy and mistrust was beginning to unfold, and Arthur, unbeknownst to him, was at the center of a whirlwind that could change his life forever. Outside the hospital, Arthur's life revolved around his daughter Sophia. Evenings were precious moments he shared with her, trying to balance the intense work routine with fatherhood. Every moment spent with Soho was a relief from the stresses and worries he faced at the hospital. Arthur would come home exhausted, but he always found energy to play with Sophia. They used to sit on the carpet in the house and build castles with blocks or draw together. "Look, Daddy. I drew the two of us," Sophia would say proudly, holding up a sheet of paper with colorful scribbles on it. "It's beautiful. My princess, you're an artist," Arthur would reply, smiling as he hugged her. Donna, the owner of the house, was a kind and loving lady who had become a great friend and support to Arthur. She lovingly cared for Sophia while he worked. Donna Ivy treated Sophia as if she were her own granddaughter, always ready to tell stories or prepare a snack. "Arthur, you're doing a wonderful job as a father," Dawn and Maya would say one evening as she prepared dinner. "Selfie is a lovely child. I don't know what I would do without your help, Donna Ivy." Arthur would reply sincerely, "You're a real blessing to us." On weekends, Arthur would make sure to take Sophia to the park. They would spend hours running around, playing on the swings and having fun. These were moments of pure joy and relaxation where Arthur could forget the challenges of work and focus only on his daughter's happiness. One afternoon while they were at the park, Sophia pointed out a pink bicycle in the store across the street. "Dad, look at that bike, do you think I could have one?" Arthur looked at the bike and then Soya's hopeful eyes. "Let's see, my dear, if you keep being good and trying hard, maybe on your birthday." Sophia smiled, satisfied with the answer, and continued to play. Arthur promised himself that he would do his best to fulfill his daughter's wish. Friday nights were reserved for movie nights. At home, Arthur and Sophia would pick a children's movie, make popcorn and snuggle on the couch. It was a ritual they both loved and it further strengthened the bond between them. Arthur also took time to teach Sophia some life lessons. He encouraged her to be curious, to ask questions and to always look for the best in herself. "You can be anything you want to be, Sophia. Never let anyone tell you Otherwise he would tell her full of pride and hope. Donna Ivy, for her part, helped Arthur keep the house in order and take care of the little day-to-day needs. She made sure Sophia had a steady routine and that nothing was ever lacking. Arthur knew that life was not easy, but he was determined to do what was best for his daughter. He found strength in the purity of Sophia's smile and the unconditional support of Donna Ivy. Every day was a new challenge, but also a new opportunity to be the father and professional he had always dreamed of. So between the exhaustive routine at the hospital and the tender moments at home, Arthur went about his day with courage and hope, always focused on Sophia's well-being and on building a better future for both of them. The days at the hospital followed an intense routine, but Arthur remained steadfast in his dedication. He had already gained the trust of many patients and colleagues, and his work was recognized by Hazel, the hospital director. However, an unexpected incident was about to change everything. One morning during the daily conference, it was announced that a batch of important medicines had disappeared from the inventory. The news felt like a bombshell among the employees, and the atmosphere in the hospital became tense. Hazel, concerned, called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Charlie, always on the lookout for any opportunity to harm Arthur, was quick to suggest that he might be the culprit. With all due respect, Hazel, we must consider all possibilities. Arthur is new here, and despite his good reputation, it is strange that this should happen just now, Charlie said, sowing the seeds of doubt. Hazel frowned, feeling uncomfortable with the implication. Charlie, we can't accuse someone without evidence, but you're right. We need to investigate to ensure justice is done. As the investigation began, Arthur continued to perform his duties, oblivious to what was being plotted against him. However, it wasn't long before he was called into Hazel's office. Arthur, I need you to come with me, Hazel said, with a serious look on her face. At the office, Arthur was briefed on the disappearance of the drugs and the suspicions that rested on him. Surprised and feeling unfairly accused, he tried to defend himself. Mrs. Hazel, I would never do such a thing. I'm here to help, not to harm, Arthur said, his voice trembling. I want to believe in you, Arthur, but we must follow protocols until the investigation is concluded. You will be suspended, Hazel replied, visibly shaken by the situation. Devastated, Arthur left the hospital with his head down. He thought of Sophia and the uncertain future that awaited them. Arriving home, he was greeted by Donna Ivy, who immediately noticed that something was wrong. What happened, Arthur? She asked. Worried, Arthur told her everything while silent tears ran down his face. Donna Ivy, surprised, tried to comfort him. We're going to get through this, Arthur. The truth will come out, she said, hugging him. In the days that followed, Arthur struggled to maintain hope. He spent more time with Sophia, trying to hide his daughter's worry. However, the nights were filled with unsettling thoughts and fear of what might happen. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the investigation continued. Hazel reviewed records and talked to employees determined to uncover the truth. She knew Arthur was a good nurse and couldn't believe he was the culprit. Charlie, on the other hand, felt victorious. He watched Hazel's every move closely, hoping that the blame would fall on Arthur for good. The tension in the hospital was palpable, and Arthur's situation seemed increasingly desperate. He knew he needed to prove his innocence not only for himself, but to secure Sophia's future. And so between the pain of the accusation and the hope of being exonerated, Arthur faced one of the most difficult times of his life. He knew the truth had to come out, and he was willing to fight for it, no matter how difficult the road. Determined to uncover the truth about the missing medicines and Arthur's possible guilt, Hazel decided to hire a private detective. She could not accept that such a dedicated employee was guilty without a fair and thorough investigation. The detective, an experienced man named Jacob, arrived at the hospital with an air of professionalism that reassured Hazel. Don't worry, Ms. Hazel. I'm going to find out what really happened here, he said. As he began to gather information, Jacob began his work by interviewing employees. He started with the people who had access to the medicine storage room. He spoke with Ivy, the veteran nurse who strongly defended Arthur. Arthur is one of the most dedicated nurses I've ever met. I don't think he would do something like this, Maya stated with conviction. The detective also interviewed Harry, the head nurse. Harry, while not having a strong opinion about Arthur's guilt, mentioned that Charlie, Hazel's husband, seemed very keen to point the finger at Arthur as the culprit. Charlie mentioned Arthur right away. I thought that was odd, Harry commented, raising an eyebrow. Jacob noted everything, carefully observing the interactions and the hospital environment. He began to discreetly track the movement of the employees, especially Charlie, who seemed to always be nearby. Meanwhile, Arthur was trying to remain calm and continue to take care of Sophia. He knew he needed to be strong for her, but the suspension worried him for the future. Every night he would sit on the edge of Sophia's bed holding her little hand, trying to find strength. "Daddy, are you going back to work at the hospital?" asked Sophia with big curious eyes. "Yes, my dear. We just need to wait a little while," Arthur replied, a forced smile deep down. He feared the worst but didn't let it show so as not to worry his daughter. Jacob continued the investigation, analyzing records and checking security cameras. He noticed that on several occasions Charlie was in the hallways near the drugstore at suspicious times. This raised further suspicions about Charlie's involvement in the disappearance. One afternoon while reviewing the recordings, Jacob found something revealing Charlie, in one of the recordings, was entering the drugstore for no apparent reason and leaving immediately afterward, looking around as if checking to see if anyone saw him. Jacob decided to confront Charlie discreetly to see his reaction. He found him in one of the hospital corridors and began a casual conversation. "Good morning, Charlie. I am investigating the disappearance of the medicines and noticed that you were near the warehouse on several occasions. Can you tell me why?" asked Jacob, watching Charlie's reaction closely. Charlie hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I was just checking to make sure everything was in order," he replied, trying to sound unconcerned. Jacob made a mental note of Charlie's nervous reaction and continued his observations. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, but he needed more concrete evidence. Meanwhile, Hazel was closely following the progress of the investigation, eager to solve the case and possibly clear Arthur's name. She knew the truth had to come out not only to see justice done, but also to maintain the integrity of the hospital. Arthur, though still suspended, felt a small measure of hope. Knowing that a detective was investigating the case, he was confident that the truth would be revealed and that he could resume his life and his work at the hospital. With each passing day, the tension increased and everyone at the hospital waited anxiously for the mystery to be solved. Jacob continued to put the pieces of the puzzle together, determined to uncover the truth and bring justice for Arthur. As Jacob continued his investigation, Arthur's story began to unfold in more detail. Arthur had grown up in an orphanage, never knowing his biological parents. From an early age, he learned to fight for everything he needed, developing an unwavering determination and a strong character at the orphanage. Arthur always stood out for his kindness and willingness to help others. He was known for protecting the little ones from the cruelest pranks and for always sharing what little he had. His childhood, though marked by hardship, shanked his generous spirit and desire to make a difference in people's lives. At 18, leaving the orphanage, Arthur bravely faced the world. He worked at various temporary jobs while studying at night to finish high school. His road to nursing school was arduous, marked by sleepless nights studying and working to pay the bills. His dedication finally paid off when he earned a scholarship to study nursing. During his college years, Arthur excelled not only academically but also in practice, where he demonstrated exceptional patient care. He was always the first to volunteer to help and the last to leave the hospital. At the hospital where he now worked, Arthur maintained the same work ethic. The veteran nurse remembered when she met him on the first day. She was impressed with his humility and determination. "Arthur is one of the most dedicated people I've ever met," Maya told Jacob during one of the interviews. "He always puts the patients first and never complains, no matter how difficult the situation is." The other colleagues also had similar stories to tell. Once Arthur stayed hours after his shift to care for a critically ill patient, even though he knew it meant less time with his daughter Sophia. "He didn't do it for recognition," commented Juan, one of the doctors. "He did it because he really cares." Meanwhile, Arthur, suspended from work, spent his days trying to maintain a normal routine for Sophia. He helped with homework, prepared meals, and tried not to let the worry show. "Are we going to get through?" this dad asked Sophia one night as she curled up next to him on the couch. "Yes, my dear. I promise it's going to be okay," replied Arthur, kissing his daughter's forehead and hugging her close to him. The nights, however, were more difficult. Arthur often found himself thinking about his past and the struggles he had faced. He knew he was innocent and felt a mixture of frustration and sadness that he was being wrongly accused. But the hope that Jacob would discover the truth gave him the strength to continue. Jacob, for his part, was increasingly convinced of Arthur's innocence. He saw how Arthur was respected and loved by his colleagues and how he had overcome enormous obstacles to get where he was. "This man's story is impressive," Jacob told Hazel at one of their update meetings. "He is an example of overcoming and dedication. I don't think he's involved in the disappearance of the medicines." Hazel, moved by the detective's words and Arthur's story, felt even more determined to find the truth. She knew Arthur was a valuable asset to the hospital and, more importantly, a person of exceptional character. With the investigation moving forward and the truth about to be revealed, the tension in the hospital was palpable. Everyone was anxiously awaiting the outcome, hoping that justice would be served and that Arthur would be able to return to the job he loved so much. And so as Jacob continued to put the pieces together, Arthur's story became an example of resilience and courage, inspiring everyone around him and setting the stage for the final revelation that would change their lives forever. Jacob was determined to solve the case of the missing medicines, but his investigation took an unexpected turn. While sifting through old documents and hospital records, he came across information that perplexed him. Among the files, he found medical records from more than 19 years ago that mentioned a young woman named Hazel. Intrigued, Jacob began to dig deep into Hazel's past. He discovered that in her youth, Hazel had had a relationship with a young man of humble origins. The affair, however, was abruptly interrupted by pressure from Hazel's parents, who did not accept the relationship because of the difference in social class. Hazel was forced to abandon her love, but there was one detail that no one knew: she was pregnant when she separated from her boyfriend. Hazel gave birth to a baby boy, but was forced by her parents to give into an orphanage to keep up appearances and protect the family's reputation. The baby's name was Arthur. Jacob was shocked by the discovery. Arthur, the dedicated and wrongfully accused nurse, was Hazel's biological son. The detective knew this information would change everything, but he needed concrete proof before revealing the truth. Meanwhile, Arthur continued to live under the shadow of the accusation. He was trying to maintain normalcy at home, taking care of Sophia and finding ways to occupy his time. Worry about the future was constant, but he clung to the hope that the truth would eventually come out. One night, as he put Sophia to sleep, Arthur reflected on his life. He thought about the orphanage where he grew up, the struggles he faced, and how he always dreamed of meeting his birth parents. He wondered who they were and why they had abandoned him, but those questions always remained unanswered. Jacob continued his research and managed to track down a former friend of Hazel's who confirmed the story of the forbidden affair, pregnancy. With this new information, Jacob decided to confront Hazel. He knew the truth had to be revealed not only to clear Arthur's name, but to unite a family that was unjustly separated. The next morning, Jacob requested a meeting with Hazel in his office. She was anxious to know the results of the investigation, but was not expecting the revelation. She was about to hear: Hazel, during my investigation, I discovered something surprising. Jacob began in a serious tone. Arthur is not only an excellent nurse wrongly accused, he is your biological son. Hazel was stunned. What are you saying, Jacob? That's impossible. I found medical records and talked to people who confirmed the story. You had a son over 19 years ago and he was given to an orphanage. That son is Arthur, Jacob explained, showing the documents he had gathered. Hazel felt the ground disappear beneath her feet, painful. Memories of her past returned to the surface and she realized that Arthur was the boy she was forced to abandon. Tears filled her eyes as reality settled in. I never knew what happened to him. My parents forced me to give him up, Hazel said, her voice breaking. I always thought about him. I wondered where he was, if he was okay. Jacob put a hand on her shoulder, offering support. Hazel, it's time to right this wrong. Arthur deserves to know the truth and you deserve to have your son back. Hazel, still in shock, nodded. She knew she had to tell Arthur about his true origins, but she also knew that wouldn't be easy. There was a lot of explaining to do and a lot of feelings to deal with. Meanwhile, Arthur continued his routine, trying to ignore the anguish of suspension and the uncertainty of the future. He had no idea what was about to be revealed. The truth was about to emerge, bringing with it not only the resolution of an injustice, but also the reunion of a family separated by fate. Hazel and Arthur were about to face a turning point in their lives where past and present would meet in unexpected and transformative ways. Jacob was continuing his investigations, determined to fully elucidate the disappearance of the medicines and to innocent Arthur. During his observations he noticed that Hazel's husband Charlie was acting suspiciously. Charlie always seemed to be around at crucial times and made sure to direct suspicion against Arthur. Jacob decided to follow Charlie discreetly. It was then that he made a shocking discovery. Charlie was having an affair with one of the hospital nurses, Carla. The two frequently met at a coffee shop near the hospital, where they conversed intimately, and conspirator Jacob managed to photograph the encounters, documenting the necessary evidence. With this information, Jacob began to put the puzzle together. He again reviewed the security camera footage and found a video showing Charlie entering the drugstore on the day of the disappearance. The footage showed Charlie acting furtively, confirming his suspicions. Certain that he had sufficient evidence, Jacob requested an urgent meeting with Hazel in her office. He presented all the evidence. Hazel, I found out who is behind the disappearance of the medicines and also other things you need to know, Jacob said. Handing the photos and videos to Hazel, she examined the evidence in disbelief. Charlie. How could he do this and that affair with the nurse? I can't believe it. He tried to frame Arthur to divert attention from his own actions, Jacob explained. The footage clearly shows Charlie entering the warehouse, and with these photos it is clear that he is having an affair with Carla. Hazel felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Not only had her husband betrayed her, but he had also tried to ruin an innocent man's career. She knew she had to act quickly to confront Charlie and protect Arthur. I am going to confront Charlie tonight, Hazel said, determined. But first we need to clear Arthur's name. He deserves to know the truth about all of this. Jacob nodded. I'm here to help in any way I can. Hazel, we're going to right this injustice. Hazel stayed up all night, going over in her mind everything she needed to tell Charlie. His betrayal and actions were unforgivable, and she knew she had to confront him once and for all. The next morning, she decided it was time to act. Charlie arrived home at the end of the day, exuding an air of confidence that Hazel now saw as pure hypocrisy. He walked in the door with a smile, but soon noticed the serious, determined expression on his wife's face. Hazel. What happened? Are you okay? He asked, trying to disguise the concern. Hazel, keeping her cool, replied coldly. We need to talk Charlie now. She led him into the living room, where she had placed all the evidence Jacob had gathered, the photos, the videos, and the reports. Charlie looked at the table and his expression changed to a mixture of surprise and fear. Hazel. What is all this? He asked, trying to keep his composure. This is proof of your betrayals and despicable actions. Hazel said in a firm voice. I know about your affair with Carla, and I know you stole the meds to frame Arthur. How could you do this? Charlie. In desperation, tried to justify himself. Hazel. Please listen to me. I did this for us. I thought Arthur was getting too close to you and I was afraid of losing everything. Lose everything, repeated Hazel. Incredulous. You risk an innocent man's career out of jealousy and the affair with Carla. That was for us too. Charlie shook his head, searching for words that might justify his actions. Hazel. I made mistakes. I know, but we can get through this together. Please forgive me. Hazel stood up, keeping her stance firm. There is no forgiveness for what you did. Charlie. You destroyed our trust and tried to ruin Arthur's life. I can't and won't let this go unpunished. Charlie tried to move closer, but Hazel pushed him away. You need to get out of this house now and get ready because tomorrow the hospital will know everything. Charlie, out of options, grabbed some of his things and hurried out of the house. Hazel was relieved to see him go, but she knew the job wasn't done yet. She needed to clear Arthur's name and make sure justice was done. The next morning, Hazel went to the hospital and called a meeting with the administration and all the employees involved. She presented all the evidence against Charlie, explaining in detail how he had planned everything to frame Arthur. We have all the evidence here that Charlie was responsible for the disappearance of the medicines and the attempt to frame Arthur, Hazel said, showing the documents and recordings. He acted out of jealousy and fear of losing his position, and I apologize to everyone for not realizing this sooner. Members of management were shocked but thanked Hazel for her bravery and transparency. Arthur, who had been called back to the hospital, was present and listened to it all with a mixture of relief and emotion. Arthur, I'm so sorry for everything you went through, Hazel said, approaching him. You are an excellent nurse and a person of integrity. I hope you can forgive us for the mistake we made. Arthur, his eyes filled with tears, nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Hazel. I just want to get back to doing my job and taking care of patients. Hazel smiled, feeling a huge weight lift from her shoulders, and you will. Arthur, as of now, you are officially reinstated to your position. The meeting ended with an atmosphere of relief and renewal. Arthur felt grateful for the support and that justice had finally been done. Hazel knew that she still had one last revelation to make to Arthur, but for now she was happy to see him innocent and back where he belonged. With the truth about Charlie exposed and Arthur reinstated, the hospital was beginning to return to normal, but Hazel knew the journey wasn't over yet. She needed to tell Arthur about her true origin, and that conversation would change their lives forever. After the meeting at the hospital, Hazel felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. The injustice against Arthur had been corrected, but there was still the most delicate matter, telling the truth about his origin. She knew this revelation would change both their lives forever, and the anticipation of how Arthur would react made her nervous. Hazel decided she couldn't put this conversation off any longer. That afternoon she took her car and drove to Arthur's house. When she arrived, she was greeted by Donna Ivy, who recognized her immediately. Mrs. Hazel. What a surprise, Arthur is home. Please come in, said Mrs. Ivy. Kindly. Arthur appeared in the living room, surprised to see Hazel there. Mrs. Hazel. What brings you here? Hazel took a deep breath trying to find the right words. Arthur, we need to talk. It's about something very important from your past and mine. Curious. And a little worried. Arthur nodded and sat down, ready to hear what Hazel had to say. Arthur. During the investigation, I discovered something that changes everything, something I didn't even know myself until recently. Hazel began, her voice trembling slightly. Many years ago when I was young, I was in a relationship that my parents did not approve of. I was forced out of that relationship, but I was pregnant at the time. Arthur listened intently, beginning to understand the direction of that conversation. My parents forced me to give the baby to an orphanage to protect the family's reputation. That baby, Arthur, was you. Arthur froze, the words echoing in his mind. What are you saying? Her voice came out shaky, almost in a whisper. I'm your birth mother. Arthur. Hazel continued, tears now rolling freely down her face. I never knew what happened to you. My parents wouldn't let me know. When I found out, it was like a part of me that was lost had finally come back. Arthur felt a whirlwind of emotions: shock, disbelief, sadness, and most of all, an overwhelming sense of truth. He looked into Hazel's eyes and saw sincerity and deep regret. You, my mother, repeated Arthur, trying to process the information. And all this time. Hazel felt unable to speak for a moment. Yes. Arthur, I'm so sorry for all the suffering you've been through. I never wanted to abandon you, never wanted you to suffer. If I could change the past, I would have fought to stay with you. Arthur, still in shock, felt a mixture of grief for what he had lost and unexpected relief at finally learning the truth about where he had come from. Tears filled his eyes as he tried to find words. I always wanted to know who my parents were, Arthur said, his voice breaking. I always wondered why they left me in the orphanage. Now I know. Hazel reached over and took Arthur's hands in hers. I want to ask for your forgiveness. Arthur. I know nothing I say can erase the past, but I want to be present in your life from now on if you'll let me. Arthur looked at Hazel, seeing not only the hospital director but the woman who gave him life, the woman who, despite everything, was now there asking for forgiveness and offering a new chance at connection. This is a lot to process, Arthur admitted with a deep sigh. But I see the sincerity in your eyes, and despite everything, I want to believe we can build something from this. Hazel smiled, a smile of hope and gratitude. Thank you, Arthur. I promise I'll do my best to deserve your trust and make up for lost time. The two embraced, full of complex emotions but also a promise of a new beginning. Donna Ivy, who had watched the conversation from afar, smiled, tearfully happy to see Arthur finding answers to the questions that had plagued him all his life. The revelation brought redemption for both Hazel and Arthur, she for finally confronting her past and seeking to right the wrongs, and he for finding the truth and a new connection with his mother. Together, they knew they would have challenges ahead, but they also had the opportunity to build a new story based on love and understanding. As the sun set, Arthur and Hazel sat together talking about their lives and dreams. The future now seemed brighter with the promise of a family finally reunited, with the truth revealed and Charlie out of their lives. Hazel felt a deep relief. She and Arthur knew the journey to rebuild their lives together would be challenging, but they were both ready to face the future as a family. The following weekend, Arthur and Sophia moved into Hazel's house. The move was marked by feelings of hope and renewal. Hazel's home, spacious and cozy, was soon filled with Sophia's laughter and playfulness, bringing a new energy to the atmosphere. Welcome to our new home, Hazel said excitedly as she opened the door for Arthur and Sophia. I'm so happy we have this opportunity to be together. Arthur smiled and looked around, sensing the sincerity in his mother's words. Thank you, Hazel, we're happy to be here too. It's going to be a new beginning for all of us. Hazel and Arthur worked together to create a harmonious routine. Mornings began with breakfast as a family, where they would talk about their plans for the day. Sophia loved the stories Hazel told about Arthur's childhood, and they grew closer and closer at each shared meal. Saturday afternoons became special times for family outings. They would visit parks, museums, and other places where they could create happy memories. Arthur watched with joy as Hazel and Sophia grew closer and closer, forming a grandmother-granddaughter bond that filled his heart with happiness. At the hospital, Arthur's return to work was greeted with applause and smiles. His colleagues, who now knew the truth, welcomed him warmly. Ma, the veteran nurse, gave him a big hug. We're so happy to have you back, Arthur, Maya said. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Arthur smiled, finally feeling at peace. Thank you, Ivy, I'm happy to be back. Hazel, now without Charlie's shadow in her life, was completely devoted to her new family. She found redemption at Arthur and Sophia's side, and her heart was filled with gratitude for every moment they spent together one night. After putting Sophia to sleep, Hazel and Arthur sat on the porch watching the stars. I still can't believe we finally found each other. Jack said, looking up at the sky. I spent my whole life wondering about my parents and now I'm here with you. Hazel held Arthur's hand. I wondered about you every day too. Arthur, never a day went by that I didn't think about where you'd be and how you be. Now that we're together, I feel like we can finally start living fully. Arthur looked at his mother, seeing the sincerity and love in her eyes. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Hema. I promise I will do my best to be the son and father Sophia deserves. The next few months were filled with moments of joy and growth. Hazel and Arthur worked together to create a stable and loving environment for Sophia, who blossomed amidst the nurturing and support of her new family. Hazel rediscovered herself as a grandmother and mother, finding new purpose alongside Arthur and Sophia. She became involved in community projects and in the hospital, determined to make a difference in other people's lives. Just as she had done in Arthur's life. Arthur, for his part, found the peace he had always wanted. He now had a family to love and protect, and that gave him the strength and motivation to keep going. His relationship with Hazel was deepening every day, and he was grateful for every moment shared one sunny afternoon as they played in the garden. Sophia ran up to Arthur and Hazel holding a drawing she had made. Look, I drew our family, she said, proudly showing the paper. Hazel and Arthur knelt down to look at the drawing. It was a simple picture, but full of meaning, 3 figures holding hands, with bright smiles on their faces. It's perfect. Sophia. Hazel said, tears in her eyes. We're a real family. Now Arthur looked at Hazel and then at Sophia, feeling a wave of happiness. Yes. Sophia, we are a family and always will be. With the truth revealed and a new beginning in front of them. Arthur. Hazel and Sophia prepared to face the future together. They knew there would still be challenges, but they also knew that together they could overcome anything. The family, finally reunited, found joy, purpose, and above all the love they had always wanted. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put likes, share with friends and subscribe to the channel.